And most people end their day the same way they lived it, reactively. They scroll through whatever the algorithm serves them, replay conversations that already happened, rehearse problems they can't solve tonight, and eventually fall into sleep with a mind still running at full noise. And then they wake up the next morning and wonder why nothing seems to change, why the same fears keep appearing, why the same patterns keep returning, why, despite the effort they pour into every day, the internal architecture of who they are seems stubbornly fixed. What they don't know, what almost no one ever told them, is that the hours just before sleep are not a passive wind down. They are the most strategically important window of the entire day. The moment when the brain transitions from active defense to deep absorption, or the moment when what you place inside your mind doesn't just pass through it, it sinks in. Sun Tzu, writing The Art of War over 2,500 years ago, understood something about the nature of victory that modern neuroscience is only now fully confirming. Battles are won before they are fought, and the most decisive preparation does not happen on the field. It happens in silence, in the dark, before the action begins. This video is a free exploration and interpretation of Sun Tzu's philosophy on how to use the hour before bed as a strategic weapon for reprogramming the mind. Before we go further, if you have ever felt like your mindset is working against you, no matter how hard you try to change it, this is for you. Subscribe right now and hit the like button. It takes 1 second and it helps this channel reach the people who need it most. Or now let's get into it. Sun Tzu wrote one of the most quietly revolutionary sentences in The Art of War in the very first chapter, and almost everyone walks right past it. The general who wins a battle makes many calculations in his temple before the battle is fought. The general who loses makes but few calculations beforehand. The temple, not the battlefield, not in the heat of combat, not under the pressure of crisis. Before any of that, in the still, protected space where the mind is not yet at war with circumstances, where it can plan, project, and prepare with full clarity. For Sun Tzu's generals, the temple was a literal place, set apart, quiet, designated specifically for the deep strategic work that would determine the outcome of everything that came after. And here is the insight that changes everything when you apply it to the modern mind. Your last hour before sleep is that temple. It is the only part of the day when the noise has quieted, when the demands of the world have temporarily retreated, and when the mind is in precisely the state that neuroscience now confirms is most open to deep imprinting. Researchers studying sleep and memory consolidation have confirmed what Sun Tzu built into his war philosophy. What the mind holds just before sleep is processed differently from information encountered during the day. The transition from wakefulness into sleep pulls the brain from high-frequency beta waves, the state of active, critical, defending thinking, through alpha waves, and into the theta state, a frequency of 4 to 8 hertz where the prefrontal cortex's analytical filtering begins to relax. In that window, input reaches the subconscious with significantly less resistance. The brain's gatekeeping mechanism steps aside. Dr. Bruce Lipton, developmental biologist, described this as one of 2 daily windows when the brain becomes genuinely receptive to reprogramming. And it opens every single night automatically, whether or not you use it strategically. Sun Tzu never wasted his temple time. His generals used those hours to run calculations, build scenarios, and engrave strategy into the mind so deeply that when battle came, the response was not reactive. It was already decided. That is exactly what the hour before bed can do for you. The only question is, what are you currently placing in your temple? Before Sun Tzu's generals could design a winning strategy, they were required to complete an essential intelligence phase. He was unambiguous. If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. Apply this to the pre-sleep window, and the intelligence question becomes uncomfortably specific. What is your mind actually consuming in the hour before you fall asleep? For most people, the honest answer looks something like this: a phone screen, social media that alternates between outrage and envy, news designed to activate threat response, content that was built not to nourish your goals, but to maximize the time you spend staring at it, and occasionally, the replay of everything that went wrong today, or are narrated in the harshest version of your own inner voice. Sun Tzu would call this feeding the enemy, because whatever information the mind holds in the pre-sleep window becomes the material the brain works with during the night. Neuroscience has confirmed through decades of sleep memory research that the brain does not simply rest during sleep. It actively consolidates, reorganizes, and integrates the experiences and information of the day into long-term memory and belief structures. NREM sleep coordinates a hippocampal neocortical dialogue that strengthens neural connections formed just before sleep. REM sleep then contributes to the emotional tagging and integration of those memories into the broader network of who you understand yourself to be. This is not a metaphor. In the science from Nature, neuroscience is clear. Long-term memory formation is a major function of sleep. Sleep transforms and builds persisting memories through neuronal replay. And the material being replayed is largely what entered the mind last, while the defensive filtering was still high enough to absorb it. In other words, whatever you are placing before your mind in the last 60 minutes of the day, your brain is spending the next 7 to 8 hours building into your architecture. Sun Tzu would ask, is what you are currently feeding it leading you toward victory or programming your own defeat? Pause here for a second. Honestly, what does your last hour before sleep usually look like? Phone, TV, silence, stress? Drop it in the comments below. You might be surprised how many people are running the exact same pre-sleep pattern and wondering why they can't change. Naming it is the first intelligence move. Sun Tzu left behind a line in The Art of War that most people treat as a military instruction about keeping strategy secret, but it contains something far more interesting when read through the lens of the pre-sleep mind. Let your plans be dark and impenetrable as night, and when you move, fall like a thunderbolt. Darkness in Sun Tzu's framework is not absence. It is the condition of quiet preparation where strategy is formed without interference, without exposure to the enemy's countermoves, without the dilution that comes from too many voices. And this is precisely what the hour before bed can become, if you build it deliberately. Here is what the pre-sleep protocol looks like when constructed through Sun Tzu's strategic lens, grounded in what behavioral science and neuroscience confirm actually works. The first move is to remove what doesn't serve the mission. Just as Sun Tzu would never allow spies into the temple, the phone, the primary delivery mechanism for reactive, threatening, comparison-generating content, has no strategic role in the pre-sleep hour. Neuroscience confirms this independently. Screens suppress melatonin, keep the brain in beta wave activity, and interrupt the transition into theta. Removing it is not a lifestyle preference. It is an operational decision. The second move is to introduce intentional content, not motivation, input. Specifically, a brief written review of 3 things that went well today. Research consistently shows that gratitude practice before sleep shifts the brain's emotional baseline, reducing cortisol, increasing positive neurochemical priming, and creating a more receptive state for the consolidation that follows during the night. High-performance researcher Jack Canfield specifically identified this as one of the most reliable pre-sleep practices for subconscious reprogramming. The third move is strategic visualization, the mental rehearsal of the person you are becoming, the goals you are moving toward, the identity you are building. Not wishful thinking. Deliberate internal scenery, held with clarity and emotional engagement in the theta window. When you feel what you're visualizing, the brain cannot distinguish between the rehearsed scenario and a real experience. The neural pathways form either way. So Sun Tzu's temple was not empty. It was full of calculated preparation. Fill yours. Sun Tzu quoted his own commentators on a principle he considered essential enough to include in Chapter 1. Without constant practice, the officers will be nervous and undecided when mustering for battle. Without constant practice, the general will be wavering and irresolute when the crisis is at hand. Constant practice, not occasional, not inspired bursts separated by weeks of old patterns. Constant, disciplined, repeated practice. Because the mind does not change through intention, it changes through repetition. And this is precisely where most attempts at pre-sleep reprogramming fail. They are treated as an experiment rather than a campaign. The subconscious does not update on the basis of single exposures. of it updates through accumulated pattern recognition. Behavioral neuroscientist Dr. Joe Dispenza, whose work bridged ancient practice with modern brain imaging, demonstrated that the brain requires consistent, repeated exposure to a new thought pattern before it begins to restructure the underlying neural architecture. A single night of visualization is a single calculation in the temple. The campaign requires a sequence of them. Research on neuroplasticity during sleep confirms this with specific timelines. Targeted memory reactivation studies, where specific content was cued during sleep, showed that neuroplasticity effects began emerging within 24 hours, but the behavioral and structural brain changes took weeks to fully manifest. This is not a flaw in the process. It is the biology of how the brain builds permanence. The formula is simpler than it sounds. Same time, same sequence, every night. Not because ritual is romantic, but because the brain responds to consistent temporal and contextual cues. The consistency itself trains the brain to enter the receptive state more rapidly and more deeply on cue. The practice becomes automatic. The reprogramming accelerates. Sun Tzu did not prepare his armies once and then trust that the preparation would hold forever. He drilled them until the responses were ingrained, until the actions that needed to happen under pressure had already been rehearsed so many times that they required no new decision. That is what nightly pre-sleep practice builds in your mind. Not motivation, infrastructure. Sun Tzu stated the paradox at the center of his entire philosophy with complete directness. Victorious warriors win first and then go to war, while defeated warriors go to war first and then seek to win. Victory is not a result of the battle. It is a condition that precedes it. And in the war of daily life, in the struggle to change patterns, build new identity, become the version of yourself you know is possible, the winning happens before the day begins. It happens in the hours you spend asleep, and it is determined entirely by what you placed in your mind before you closed your eyes. This is the final and most complete form of Sun Tzu's pre-sleep method. The mind that is deliberately prepared in the hour before sleep is a mind that arrives at the next day already positioned. And the neural pathways rehearsed during the night are more available the following morning. The identity reinforced during the theta window is the one the brain defaults to under pressure. The beliefs consolidated during REM sleep shape the automatic interpretations that determine how every new situation is read. Modern sleep science from Harvard's Division of Sleep Medicine confirms the mechanism. Post-learning sleep is beneficial for memory performance across complex declarative domains. What the brain consolidates during the night is not neutral. It is weighted toward what was most emotionally and temporally salient before sleep. Feed the brain the right material at the right moment, and it will build the infrastructure of your future self while you rest. The person who goes to sleep feeding their mind anxiety, scarcity, and passive consumption wakes up with those patterns reinforced and ready. The person who goes to sleep with deliberate input, gratitude, clear vision, intentional identity, wakes up with those patterns primed and accessible. Both are using the same biological window. Only one is using it strategically. Sun Tzu won his battles in the temple. You win yours in the dark, in the quiet, in the hour most people waste. The general who prepares before the fight has already won. The only question remaining is, what will you place in your mind tonight? Sun Tzu never trusted the chaos of battle to determine what he was capable of. He prepared deeply, deliberately in the hours before the fight, so that when the moment arrived, the outcome was already established. Your last hour before sleep is that preparation, not rest, strategy. Well, not passivity, programming. Remove what doesn't serve you, install what does. Do it with consistency, with intention, and with the understanding that the mind you take into sleep tonight is the mind that meets tomorrow. Subscribe if this reached you. Share it with someone who needs it, and I'll see you in the next one.